And welcome back, Seth. We'll continue,
Why, thank you. Thank you for having me.
we'll continue with part two here. Um, do you recall what we were talking about last? Um, yeah, no, that's fine. If I mean, we can just
I was just focusing on the cold,
well, I'm feeling it now.
relatively. You said the kidney affected your body's a cold. I gave my wife a kidney a year ago in July, and ever since then I've been much more sensitive to cold. So I can identify.
Wow. Well,
Yeah,
good on you
yeah.
for that too, though, man. But yeah,
Thanks, man. It was like there's compatibility and then there's compatibility.
yeah, right. Nice. I like that. I like that. Yeah, I find too that with the coldness, as I we were talking earlier before we started recording again, that there was a liveliness about myself, the energetic levels, and Wim Hof. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not,
Oh,
but
I
massive
got
fan, dude. Right? Holy shit, that guy's just amazing, man. I'd
yeah,
love to have him
yeah,
on the podcast if it was ever
w-
possible. Shit, right? We can make
yeah,
that
yeah.
happen. Who knows? Um,
I worship at the altar of the Wim Hof and his
nice.
methods
Yeah, man.
and what he's capable of and where he's coming from. I just can't get enough. I love my ice baths. I say that
That's
you
it,
know,
right? I did too until I got struck with AS. But
yeah.
before all that, I mean, that's just another story. But I found the cold therapy and the breathing techniques during the cold therapy was so, God, I can't even put that into words. It just felt like I was being reborn.
It's
And
like magic. Yeah, it's
oh
like
shit, it was,
it's
man. You know?
you're bridging gaps in genetic expression. I
Yeah.
mean, there's, between nutrition and, tapping into some of the um, ways in which our body operates.
Hmm.
That mind body spirit connection, and nowhere is that more evident for me than ice.
Same,
Ice therapies.
right?
And here's my other thing, man.
Hmm.
And I use this for extremely hot chili peppers. I grow my
Yes.
own,
Shit.
and
Nice.
that catalyst will catapult you into a whole different pharmacological, naturally obtained being. I've suffered from back pain and shoulder
Yeah,
pain
man.
and knee pain. Um, I get the right concentration of hot sauce or chili peppers that I grow or find at the store, and I'm talking about stuff that's like north of 1 million Scoville units. I mean, your Carolina
Shit.
Reapers and Trinidad Scorpions and
Yeah.
Ghost chilies. And there's a unbelievably noticeable effect on your body. Very similar to me, as the ice baths and the
Nice.
therapy and the breathing. So
That's awesome because I used
we're
to do the same, right? With the peppers and
mhm,
shit. But if you've got arthritic issues and whatnot, I mean, we all do, especially as we
mm,
creep up in the years. But
mhm,
I've been raving about this turmeric drink for so long, and I'll get that on one of the podcasts that I mentioned. And it's so simple. It's a lemon. It's a whole lemon with the rind included. Uh,
uh-huh,
Ginger, man, just thumb size. A clove of garlic, right? These don't have to be essentially organic. It's
mhm,
preferable to the individual. Um, Black pepper to make the turmeric bind. Without it, it just
mhm,
filters out and does nothing for you.
right.
Um, and a dash of cayenne pepper. And you mix that all up with 8 ounces of water first thing in the morning, ingesting nothing beforehand, and then
Hmm.
wait, a decent 30, 40 minutes afterwards. I fast anyway, so I don't have to worry about it. But
Yeah.
buddy, I'll tell you, man, forget the Humira and all that junk that the pharmaceutical companies wanted to just throw at you and make you sick. I was dying from that shit too. But I got on
Yeah.
that, and within 4 days, my body was cleared right out. Physically, mentally, emotionally. It was just alarming.
Powerful antioxidants.
Man.
We're like the same person because
We are essentially.
I read a thing. God, it's got to be 5 6 years ago,
Yeah.
and it was this health professional. I can see his face. I can't remember his name, but if it comes to me, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Very similarly, first thing in the morning before I have absolutely anything else, I make a drink of 8 ounces of water. But this is my concoction: turmeric, cayenne pepper,
Mm,
Himalayan sea salt,
nice.
and lemon juice and apple cider vinegar. So
Ah,
I've been doing
that's
that every
perfect,
day,
man.
right? And that is like my tonic, man. I call it dragon piss because it's so terrible.
It
But
is.
I've turned other people on it, and
Yeah.
you know what? Ostensibly, the tagline for that concoction was "flush and revitalize your adrenal glands,"
Nice.
and that was, so integral to, the functionality of your body. I mean, you create 55 different types of adrenaline in your body.
It's pretty
And,
wild.
the idea that you can actively participate in helping to maintain that system,
Yeah.
anybody who
Nobody
has ever
knows.
studied the
Really
human
is.
body just marvels at it, right?
Yeah,
Like, I mean,
exactly.
just the different systems working in concert together, and that alone should make anybody as non-racist as possible,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you you look at the magistry of chemistry and nerves and all these different things that operate on electric in our bodies. It's so unbelievably overwhelming, and every
It
single
is.
person on the planet has the same, barring a little bit of this, a little spectrum over here, a little
That's
spectrum over
right.
there. They get the same hardware.
You know what it is too,
So
Seth? I got to throw it there right
mm,
quick just to add into that point before we continue on is it's a symphony within us,
mm,
individualization. And the problem is, as a global collective whole, we're not synchronized. We think that we have to be our own individual being so that we can, I don't know, gloat or glow or whatever it may be. But your body inside, that's what it's doing. And I think maybe that's what we're going to generate to in the coming ages of things with our offspring. And, as a
yeah,
lineage of our, humanity just keeps growing, that's probably where we're going to be at. We won't be
right. I,
thinking like you and I are separate people. I don't think that right now when you mention like we're kind of like saying like, well, essentially we are. The collective whole. We're all one. Bob Marley's
right.
been saying it from way back, and the monks
Yeah,
and so forth. So,
yeah.
uh,
Well,
yeah,
how
I really
simple
like how
is
you
enlightenment
mentioned
if all it takes is treating each and every person like they're part of me,
that. Well, that's it.
right? Like, is
You know,
that the
yeah, that's all you got to do, man. Right? And I love reading books on stuff like that, man, because it
hmm
it kind of
hmm
put you in that perspective and remind you each and every day, every aspect of your life throughout the course of the day is always keeping you in that mind state, right?
yeah,
To
yeah.
be focused. I can't even say it. I need more water. I'm drinking too much tea. I drink
I'm
this
like,
shit all day long, right?
I, I,
So
I've like the opposite. Sometimes I say like my mind is so fractured until the right amount of caffeine is in there. So I know my
yeah,
levels
well,
have to be.
yeah, I was the same. Like I had to give up on the coffee though for the blood
Yeah,
circulation.
yeah,
Even though
yeah.
like I'm seeing things clearly, hey son, and things are coming to a head with this. My body's still riddled with that toxicity level of the lithium shit. Like
Mm,
my
mm,
naturopath, she's saying, well, tests are saying, the majority of your problems right now is the toxicity levels of that. And that's why I advocate for this so heavily to people. And I put that on Facebook there about, the dangers of these drugs that they're claiming is beneficial for everyone. And they're just cocktails and concoctions that they're
yeah,
guinea pigging with everybody.
yeah.
And
And not even to mention the empowering action of giving something else the agency over your state of mind,
yeah,
right? Like, it's like anybody who's ever been a smoker understands that at some point in time, the role of master and slave switches,
yeah,
right? Like, you are then slave to that you know uh, combination of things, right? Like
we
that
are.
that that addiction has created its own niche in your psyche. So you have assigned these uh, these energies towards that end, right? So it's very empowering for people to accept and understand that they actually do have the capability to find balance,
Just one
and
second,
they
Kev.
apt.
Hold on a
Go
second.
ahead.
Brandon, come here, please. Nothing like having a recording and having to intercept for a moment. Can you go down and
Nice.
see Josh for a quick minute about the washer, please? Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that.
Ah,
Nothing worse than
good.
recording. Like, I can edit it, but what the hell, man? I'll just let that roll, right? Sorry for that interruption, everybody.
No worries, man. One love, baby.
Yeah, man, right? It all comes together in synchronicity somehow.
No, it's like I was really doing some prolific shit
Well,
there,
I know,
man.
dude, right? You were on a
Rewind, rewind. I'm
roll.
just
Like, yeah, shit.
kidding.
That's fucking awesome, man. I gotta
We're
say,
gonna
Seth,
change.
I'm so
Oh,
glad to have you on the podcast, buddy. It's
ah,
definitely refreshing for sure, man, just to have this,
right
have
back
it.
at you, brother.
Yeah.
I fully expect to, be in contact, from here until the next dawn of
Yeah,
Atlantis.
buddy.
So
I was thinking the same,
you're
right?
you're as far as I'm concerned, wherever I'm going, you're going with me at ditto infinity. So
Oh,
I
exactly.
love it. I love it. Yeah, you're my kind of Canadian, man.
Decent. Decent. Oh, shit. Okay. I just got bad news about my washer. It's on
Uh-oh.
the fritz. Okay.
That's how they get. They don't make them like they used to. Let's
No,
let's
what's
just
about
let's just dissect
quantity
all
over quality,
cliches.
right? Yeah, we should. So what's the word, bud? He'll text me after? Oh, perfect. Okay. So no more interruptions. That's cool. Nothing worse, man, because you get on a good roll and then just dissecting it, and
Timing is everything.
yeah, it
I
is. Yeah.
try and try and try to remind myself that sometimes it's like us with these technological things. We're just trying to figure out. I'm on plan C to make this thing work today, and
Yeah.
you know I find that with technology, like I will be able to like crash things, and I'll be able to not figure things out, and inexplicably there'll be blips, and I just think to myself, okay, the universe wants me to change focus over here, maybe allow
Exactly,
that
man.
to be for a minute. I'm gonna go do something
Yeah.
else. So very
That's it.
happily take
The
take the
moment,
advice.
yeah, the moment that you have that intervention, we can put it that way, I
Hmm.
guess. Just
Hmm.
the momentarily um, moment where you're like, okay, wait a minute, I need to take a breather, right? That's when you can sort things out and come back to it later, anyways. But I also find that when I tend to do too many tasks at once, everything just unrolls and then gets clusterfucked, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's a matter of
yeah.
just being present in the moment for that direct, specific
It's
task
good
and
to
focus
make
on nothing
notes
else.
though,
It
like
is.
as a writer, like I didn't know the first the last 25, 30 years that I've been accumulating stories and characters and anecdotes
Oh,
and
yeah.
funny sayings. I didn't know that I was going to be a writer.
Yeah.
I was always good at starting things, but I never had the discipline to do it and follow through until I started working with a partner about 8 years ago. Really, just to write something that I could be in as an actor, because with this look, there's only so many skinhead roles you can go out for,
Yeah.
and without vomiting. So I get the timing stuff, right? Like now I'm reminded of little things. So now I just like keep an ongoing notebook of like, you jump from subject to subject. If you think it's gold or even silver, I make a little note and try to make it as detailed as I can to like,
Sweet.
I've heard stand-up comics do that constantly.
Yeah.
If you think of something funny in a little situation, make a note of it, and when you come back to it, you can fill it out, you can flush it out.
Nice.
So
That's a good
please
way to
feel
do it.
free to jump around. I like that, but you're right though. You can
That's
only do so much. You can only write a symphony,
yeah.
when you're focused on the symphony.
And that's also why I became a landscaper. I couldn't
Mm,
fixate on the idea of being positioned in one spot for an 8 hour, 10 hour duration or whatever it may be. It's like, fuck me, man. That's monotonous,
Torturous.
asshole, right? So yeah,
Torturous. I spent 30 years in the restaurant business because
uh,
it's frenetic and fast, and
yeah,
it
yeah,
really, it helps to be high energy,
it does.
and effusive and extroverted, and be able to execute, numbers of things. And some people that are bipolar are great at it. Some people, especially actors, it's like, who do they need me to be right now, right? And I'm
Yeah,
gonna, do my best to intuit by their body language and the basic, action reaction of this push pull
like Jim
pantomime
Carrey,
where I
right?
need to go.
Jim
Oh,
Carrey, Robin Williams, like all of those characters are like, man, just they could be anything and everything at a drop of a hat. And it's like, fuck me,
right,
man, right?
right,
That was
right.
just
And there's a zen to that.
big
There's a
time.
total
Exactly.
there's a total zen to Bill Murray, right? Have you seen that documentary about the things that Bill Murray does?
Yeah,
Like the
I haven't.
oh, it's on Netflix,
I'll have to
I think
check it out, right?
he
It,
just makes it a point to go out and mingle and just do shit with
nice.
people, very ordinary stuff. And he
Well,
just
you know what I've
shows up
heard?
and he
I've heard.
creates a party.
Yeah, well, I've heard he's actually dropped into random parties, and people are like, "What the fuck? Bill Murray's here?"
This
You know?
whole thing
Yeah.
is full of those,
Oh, that'd be
is
awesome.
him just
Sporadic shit.
jumping in line at McDonald's and stealing your French fries and going,
Fuck.
nobody's ever going to believe you. Like
Yeah, really
everything from
though.
that to,
That's pretty
photo
cool.
bombing and just, but he gets it. He gets that,
It's what we're supposed to be doing in
his
life, right?
presence
Yeah.
means something,
Hmm.
and he can kind of play with those energies
Yeah.
in a loving way. You
Right.
see that there's a lot of, just he has love for the human condition, so he does these things.
That's cool, man. And that's another reason why I don't buy into, retirement ideas and just the future's not here. It's the fucking present, man. And I've read The Power of Now. I mean, I could highly
Hmm.
recommend that to anybody. Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah,
And he's
yeah.
like,
Another
oh
another of
my
my
God.
big faves.
Yeah, exactly. And, I need to, I don't know about you, but for me, constantly read material like that to keep me in alignment with that idea and that mentality.
For
Otherwise,
sure.
just,
And it
derailed.
seems to be like, echoes of a lot of the same similarities. And if you were to distill a lot of what resonates with you,
Hmm.
when it comes to philosophical thinkers, it really kind of is the basis of a lot of religion, right?
It
The
is.
other stuff gets bastardized and institutionalized and set up for control, but for the most part, a lot of what moves me about people like Eckhart Tolle, and I'm really into the Seth Speak stuff. And I don't know if you know this guy who also channels an intelligence called Cryon. It's a very similar sort of like, we are all one.
Hmm.
There is a definitive through line through, and I see it in Buddhism, I see it in
Same.
Judaism, I see it in
Yeah.
Islam and
They all come
Christianity,
from the
the
source,
purest
right?
essence of them all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other problem too, creating division. And that's the sole purpose of what I would say the hierarchy are wanting to do, right?
Hmm.
Because the moment you're labeled, colonized, not colonized, sorry, colonized. I mean, that's the fucking word. Basically, when you're boxed in and you're labeled
Hmm.
with something, right? Then you can fight amongst
Right.
yourselves. You have your own opinions, and everyone's boasting, "I'm right, you're wrong," and that's what's wrong with the world. The political side, the religious side. It's all coming from the source, man. We're all
Oh
right.
yeah,
Just
the
perception.
divisiveness is built into the algorithms that keep your eyeballs on a certain social media outlet too,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's very early on in the genesis of that AI did they understand that it's just like watching the news, right? If it bleeds, it leads. We are engineered to pay attention to the things that can affect us the most, right? And that range of human emotions has more staying power. I put it like this: you can smell a skunk from 200 yards away, but you got to put your nose right into a rose to smell it.
Yeah.
right? Like one
Sure.
represents potential danger, and the same thing is and that basic mechanism is what is utilized so much so, yeah, in nefarious ways to retain and exert control. I am I am beside myself with hope and optimism for the next generation, because I
Yeah, me
think
too.
that it's so it's so striated, instead of having, I grew up with 10 channels on the TV, right? Instead of having 500 channels, there's going to be, there's a million YouTube channels just in India,
Hmm.
right? Like, there's going to be all these uh, um, interwoven smaller communities that find each other and find, similarities and simpatico, and they are going to create idealized, realities where there's going to be less of a propensity for widespread control, which I think is definitely endemic to, growth. You
That's
can't
right.
you can't flourish, and that's, we talked about that with regards to, Western medicine model. If the whole purpose of medicating somebody is to make it more comfortable for you, the unaffected party, to be around that person, it's going to be, it's like putting a leash on a toddler, right?
Sure.
Like, it is it easier? Sure. Is it lazy? Absolutely. Is it going to give that toddler some issues to work out at some point,
Oh,
about
definitely.
constraint, about, I mean, all the things that I think Benjamin Franklin had the quote of, "Every new invention promotes laziness," and I'm all for
It's true.
technology,
Yeah.
but there is really a lot of benefit from doing things in a way that exude a currency, right? I've said before, your time and your energy are your most valuable commodities, right? So what I've also said that, love is the most powerful force, and it holds the universe together, but um, attention is the fuel of love. So if you have love, but you don't have your attention, it's empty, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't function without attention. So attention is one of the all-time, and you see, what was it, 2017, where data was crowned as the new king of all commodities, right? It's more expensive than any energy, than any other, oil, or, so data, and what is data derived by is your attention, because that can be monetized, right? Like for every
That's
1% of the internet that's directed towards your goals, it represents, $1 billion or $5 billion next year. So mindfulness of where that energy and attention is, I think, is our logical next step,
it is.
right? Like, taking care of the planet,
Yes.
taking care of each other, treating, women with more respect, and
Definitely.
allowing some of these just age old, old energy sort of paradigms
Die of
to
paradigm.
die. Yeah, they're
Yeah. No.
definitely going
Right.
to die. I mean,
And what it's doing is preventing the mindset to grow. There's no there's no growth if you're just going to remain stagnant in those ideologies. It's fucking
yeah,
foolish. And
yeah,
this is why I'm so accepting of kids coming up today and letting them have the voice of reason to speak, man, because they're the ones who are going to be ruling things after so long. We are getting in the way right now, and it's our egoistic mindset that's preventing this. We're thinking we're in
yeah.
control, we know what's best. We've been fouling things up from the beginning, so why not
Right,
allow the new upcoming individuals, the underdogs, to take a
right,
handle and see
right.
what they can do with
Well, it was. I wish I was a good visual artist, because I would have a lot of cartoons, and one of them is like the first time they used to say, "Oh, well, things were better in my day," right? And it's probably like two guys sitting outside of a cave, look, because there is a real attachment to what it is you're familiar with, right? You see a lot of people shitting on kids today because of how much time they spend playing video games. Well, I grew up watching shitty TV for more than
Yeah,
8 hours
how
a
did it
day.
benefit you? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely not. I mean, I can remember every commercial from 1976 to 1986. Uh, that wasn't proactive, right? Like, you didn't
Definitely
have
not.
problem solving skills, you didn't have socialization going on, you just had rote, masturbatory entertainment. And we will see the benefits. Of course, you've already got like entities like, the United States military does wide ranging, testing on all of its applicants, straight out of high school. And they find that kids that have identify as lifelong gamers are 30 to 70% higher in like fine motor skills and problem
Naturally,
solving and
right?
teamwork and all these things that are integral to being an adult. And they already have them because they've been doing that for 6 to 8 hours a day. So the idea that doom and gloom is really, really close to our core. Like, there is, they've been saying the world's going to end since the world began, right? Like, and take any time marker, whether it was 1000 AD or Y2K, people will glob on some sort of gloom and doom prophecy about that, and there's a lot of different reasons why. I mean, I'm sure you can get better experts to voice their research on why it is that that's so attractive. It is kind of the same dynamic as to why conspiracy theories are so much more rampant in times of flux, right? When there's unbalance in society, then all of a sudden conspiracy theories can be seen, because that is a filter, that is a lens that can be turned on anything, right? It's much more comforting to the average person who is unhappy about their status in life, about their personal identity, to blame it on the unseen hand of a multinational conglomerate who controls everything. So it's really kind of occupies the same space as religion did for
Yeah.
the longest time, right?
Before we
You
hit on the
feel
religion
as if,
part, though,
oh, go ahead.
let's just take a moment and think about why people dive into these ways of thinking. I mean, they've been passed on from generations to generations. And what I mean is the religious side of things, of the gloom and doom, the end of the world. And my
Mm-hmm.
take on that is simply, it is, but it's not like everything around us dissolves. It's infinite, just as we are.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the
Mm-hmm.
mindset that's going to break down and evolve itself, so that we're going to be working as an orchestra in synchronicity, just as I mentioned earlier with our bodies. That's how we're all
Mm-hmm.
going to be on a collective plane, I believe, is to think the same, to work in sync with each other, so that we're not a clusterfuck mass of people, right? But
Right.
religions over so many generations have fouled things up with misinterpretations, and it's simply
Well, it's a great control mechanism,
well, that's
right?
what I mean, right? It's nothing for the
Right.
individuals that are there to worship. It's the ones preaching that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I've never really sat deep and been apart or accustomed to something of that nature. It just didn't resonate with me. I knew that it was just
Mm-hmm.
hogwash, right?
Yeah,
Majority,
yeah, and it's
from my point of view.
so hypocritical, because you'll have something like the Catholic Church that used to teach reincarnation up until
Yeah.
the ninth century. They also didn't incorporate celibacy until the 12th and 13th century, and both of those decisions to limit that dogma is completely related to money,
Yeah,
right?
right?
Like,
The world go around. Okay.
they noticed that when they were teaching past lives of reincarnation, that people would get to a point in their lives where they were like, oh no, what, this is enough. I'm okay. I'm not gonna get more.
Yeah.
I'll catch you next time. And so their 10% tithing that they expected stayed more stagnant. And the same thing with the celibacy became part of the dogma because truthfully, truthfully, they found that they spent too much time in litigation with priests' children who assumed that church property belonged to them after their parents died.
Okay.
So, it's much more godlike to be celibate now because they can control it. It's like
Yeah.
the same, that was actually the basis behind uh, vegetarianism with regards to Hinduism. It
Hmm.
was not There was no dietary instruction in the Upanishads. It wasn't until the nobles tried to dissuade the other classes of people from coming on their lands and poaching their animals that they started to teach that it's more godlike not to consume meat. So it was really like a sham that
Yeah.
ended up working really well, right? I don't know.
But
I get.
well, to touch base on that, I've tried that whole veganism. I thought that's
Hmm.
what my body was requiring at the time because anytime that
Hmm.
I'd be around the smells of cooked meat, I felt nauseated.
Mm,
And I was like, okay, well, let's see, because there is a connection between veganism and spirituality in the terms of the clarity of mind. Like, I was a different person within 30, 40 days of that regimen, right?
hmm.
I felt lighter, I felt happier. And it really boils down to the fact that what you consume is going to alter, because as it breaks down in your body in a chemical formula, is going to provide, a positive or negative, and something heavy in meat source can really bog you down. When you eat something anyways, how much energy of your being, of your essence, has to dive into that to break it down, to circulate it throughout your body so that your body has nutrients. And
Right.
this is why I do intermittent fasting. But on the notion of veganism, for me, I became very sick. My hair was falling out. Like my jawline here was sinking in. I looked like shit. You know,
Yeah.
First 2 months, awesome. And, I listen to podcasts all the time. And somebody was mentioning the other day about veganism. You're not going to be able to continue that regimen for too long before something gives way, right? So
Yeah.
I had to
Yeah.
start eating meat again. But as
Well,
Seth
yeah.
puts it, man, he simply says, get something that's furthest away from you, which is the source of fish, right? Unless you
Mm,
want to go with stuff that's organically grown. But I don't know if I buy into that whole scheme either. I think it's the
yeah.
the mentality that you have presenting as you're sitting before the food, blessing, not in so much prayer form that you have to pray to a god, but just blessing your food and showing gratitude towards it will alter how it breaks down in your body. You know, um,
For sure.
a lot of people
And
aren't
it's
realizing that. But yeah, sorry, Seth, go ahead, man.
yeah,
I keep cutting you off, right?
no worries. I'm usually the other guy. Uh, and never are you more thankful for your food than after you fast, right? Like you're like, oh,
Exactly, man.
this is
Big
the
time, dude.
best
Right?
crumbs that I found on the
Yeah,
floor. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
And there is like we talked about before, such a spectrum with regards to being human, and even within what is considered bipolar. How that manifests itself, and how we can be within those parameters. But going through the process of trial and error, trying to find what works best for you. I tried, the paleo blueprint things for
Yeah,
years, and I found a great deal of success with that. Energy wise, I wasn't sick for about 4 years
nice.
at all, right? Like no colds, no nothing. I dropped 35 pounds, and I felt strong, and I was able to do intermittent fasting, and I felt as if there was synergy
Yeah.
with my body, right? Like, and I tried veganism, and
Mm,
I felt like I had kind of a similar experience to you. Is I could for about a week I was really okay, and then I went from not eating many. carbs or starches or grains at all, to supplementing a lot of what my food was with starches. Um, as a vegan, within 3 weeks, I gained 9 pounds, and I was tired all the time. I was always hungry, and I just could not work out.
Yeah.
Like I went,
Didn't
okay, my
happen.
body is just telling me no. I just can't. I can't go completely. I can't veto all
That's
these
right.
all these things.
Too
Now,
much for the body to process, you know?
yeah. And
You
do I
know,
believe that had I been more mentally committed, that that would have added a lot more weight to how my body reacted? Probably,
most
absolutely.
definitely.
I completely believe if I had a serious, you know, belief system incorporated where I just absolutely believe this is what I should be doing, then it would work for me. That's why fucking voodoo works, man, because people believe it. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen somebody affected by voodoo, and I couldn't really wrap my head around it. But it makes sense to me in retrospect
Does.
that if you wholeheartedly believe in something, that's what hypochondriac is. They believe they're going to be sick. They are sick.
Well,
They
prime example of
really
that.
are.
I've got this chemical sensitivity issue that arose. I don't know if we spoke of it before. I got it on one of my podcasts, but it happened quite a few years back, and it was probably due to the emotional instability of possibly losing my brother. I was going to boxing. I was trying to redefine who I was, my place in the world, without a fucking stepping stone, right? Trying to get off these bloody meds. My brother's gone. I'm like, well, I loved martial arts because of this, the flow state that you be in. But I wanted to try
Mm-hmm.
something different. So I tried boxing and it went well. This one particular time I came home and I was a heavy drinker then. I was drinking red wine steadily, a bottle or two a night, right? And I had this body wash. I was in the shower and I was like, oh, fuck, that's potent. Like, is this a different version of what I normally wash with? I was like, why is this
Mm-hmm.
so obvious now, right? And I said to my wife, I was like, it smells like cat piss, like ammonia, right? And from that day on, it just worsened and worsened. I was like, I'm back rolling. I'm supposed to be purifying myself with the practices that I'm doing, the dieting and all this other shit. What am I missing? What's missing in this formula, right? And it got so bad that I lost all the weight. I got diddly sick, and it was a lot to do with the toxicity of the medications. And there is
Mm-hmm.
something called glutamate e-toxicity when you're consuming a large number of carbs and it gets lodged in your brain, right? Which takes all the neurons, serotonin, dopamine, and fucks the chemistry up big time. But long story short, I had to do an EMDR training session on my own. I was told by a lot, you got to go seek professional help for that with that particular practice. Bullshit. You got an app on your phone or a YouTube, that's what I use, and you sit there for 5 minutes and watch this little dot going back and forth, right? And I've noticed after probably 60 days, give or take, of that practice every day for 5 minutes, along with my meditation and everything else that I do in the routine of an hour and a half every morning, that drastically reduced uh, those implications of tormenting ways from the, uh, whether it's body, cologne, perfumes. I mean, any detergents and shit would just get me to the point where my throat would just constrict, right? And I wasn't
Interesting.
sure what the hell it was, but I really believe that was suppression from so many years worth, man, right? So your body has a way of pushing this out and saying, hey, here it is, fuckface, deal with it. Stop projecting yourself in a different light. Stop suppressing yourself through the course of addictions, whether it's gambling, drinking,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be. So when I
Right.
stopped drinking and I actually dove into myself and completed that shadow work, and it's still an ongoing thing. I mean, you don't hit that summit and you sit at the top and going, fuck me, I'm a champ. I can reign up here and tell everyone what to do now. It doesn't work that way, right? So yeah, I don't know
You mean you
where.
don't just get to check that box and you're done? It's not
Definitely
a,
not, right? The moment you do
oh,
that, yeah, I know,
recount,
right?
fake
Damn
news.
it. No, but yeah, unfortunately, by doing something like that and having that mindset, just sets you back. It's your ego coming forward and talking for you
Hmm.
all over again, right?
Hmm.
I've been there. I always thought, oh, I can teach others. No, it's
Well,
just
it'd be fine if you were
way
in a
harder.
vacuum, but free will
Yeah,
comes in with the world around you, and you got to interact with something that's constantly subject to change. But
yeah,
I
yeah,
love it. I love
yeah.
it. That reminded me of a cool story. Did you ever hear of Anthony Burgess? Anthony Burgess was a writer, and the only thing he could get on a steady basis, he tried to sell some books early on and was unsuccessful. He was working as a critic
Mm,
for magazines, reviewing books, right? And this, he had a family, and so he needed a job, and he hated it, hated it, hated it. All he ever wanted to do was write books, and he did this for like 25 years. And he's like 48 years old. He starts
Was he
getting
drunk?
yes,
I
yes,
heard this story, but through a different source. Yes.
nice,
Yeah, yeah,
nice.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's sweet.
He gets debilitating migraines, and he goes into the doctor. I think this is like 1962 or something. He goes into the doctor, and they do all these tests, and they say, Mr. Burgess, you have inoperable brain cancer. You have a
Wow.
tumor in your brain. Get your affairs in order because you have no more than 6 months to live.
Shit.
And so he has this epiphany that he's just going to get these books that have been kind of bouncing around in his head. He's going to get them on paper.
Nice.
So he sleeps very little in 6 months. He maniacally writes out two novels. The first of which is called A Clockwork Orange.
That was a good movie, man. Shit, that was a good movie. Mind
Incredible,
blowing.
incredible book.
Fuck. Yeah, that was
He goes back to the doctor in 6 months, and there's no tumor,
figures.
completely
I've
gone.
got
So
something
that
I
kind
want
of,
to do. Yeah,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead, Seth. No, I want you to finish because I'm going to add to that, and this is something that a lot of people should be aware of, and not being fearful with you know, the preachings from the doctors saying that, oh, once
Yeah.
you're diagnosed with this, it's it, radiation or nothing. But yeah, if you,
Well,
yeah,
it just
truly,
taps into intuition, right?
yeah,
Like we have, heightened sense system that tells us what we should be doing,
yeah, that's right.
what we should be eating, what kind of life we should be living, and we get little glimpses of that.
Yeah,
Um, and ancient religion and ancient, medicine, and not Western, but they preach to that, and they all have names for it. And if it's like lucid dreaming, like if you practice it, being in touch with that, you can get better at it.
mhm.
And I mean, following our intuition is paramount.
Oh my
I mean,
God, yeah,
that little
100%.
voice in your stomach, that's outside
Yeah,
of time.
that's like
That's
the compass,
outside of,
man. Right? You don't follow that, you're gonna get fucking lost. And I've been saying that forever
absolutely,
too. Big time, big time. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, man. Ah, shit, eh? This has
I
been.
wish I had. This is good. This is
This
fun.
is.
We should do this like
Oh,
once a month at
well,
least.
this is what I was thinking. That we're gonna have ongoing podcasts, you and I, for sure. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
certain we can get other people on board. But um, when this, and did you say Andrew Burgess? No,
Anthony
Anthony Burgess.
Burgess.
Right. I'm
He
related to
also
Burgess.
wrote The Wanting Seed, and
Okay.
he went on to win different awards in science fiction, and
Mhm.
be adapted in movies. He's
Nice. I was thinking
once he
too.
listened to that intuition.
Well, that's it. What I was thinking was, I probably had cancer cells within my body. I was being tested for all kinds of shit when my health was just
Mhm.
flat and done. And when I got on that turmeric drink, the reason why I prompt that to be, you know, a go-to source for a lot of people, including myself, is because that helps alkalize the body to prevent the cells from growing. These turmerics and turmeric, these tumor cells from growing into
Yeah,
cancer shit,
makes
right?
perfect sense.
Yeah, and I
And
think that's
not only is it the physical properties, it's the intent,
exactly, and that's
right? Like how
like
does
the
homeopathy
correlation.
work?
Well, that's
Homeopathy
it.
doesn't work on a chemical level.
No,
It
that's
works
right.
on a catalytic level of intent.
Yeah, man.
right? Like, you have imbued into this action. Like, that's the power of prayer. That's the
It
power of,
is, man.
remote viewing, and, all these things that access this kind of Akashic field around us, is that you have belief, you have intent, you are projecting an actual energetic value onto something.
And that's what
Hence,
the Western side doesn't understand. They're only working with
mhm.
the biological side of things. It's just your body. Your mind isn't attached to this. Your spirituality isn't either. Actually, we
Well,
are
that's why
mind, body, and
placebo effect
thoughts.
is
But
up to 40% efficacy, right? Like, you
exactly.
can have
Well,
this.
they've done it with fucking testosterone, TRT, man. Like I was
Yeah,
on that
yeah.
before too, and I
Hmm.
used to think, well, if I don't have this, I'm fucked. My doctor fouled up.
Right.
He made a grand mistake thinking that like my levels uh, for lithium were way up there, creating all kinds of problems. But he was basically saying it was my testosterone levels that were low, and it wasn't, man.
Mm.
My testosterone levels were fine, but I got jacked on that shit. But it was more of the intent, as you said, because at that age, I was only like 33, 34. You don't need
Hmm.
testosterone. It's only dropped 10% in that 30-year mark anyway, right?
Yeah.
And I
And
was heavily
steroids
given.
act like jet fuel to me
Oh,
now.
fuck yeah, right? And that made me more anxious, more
Hmm.
nervous, apprehensive all the fucking time. I was jacked, but I was also working 10, 12-hour days, 6 days a week, landscaping with push mowers, hedge trimmers, like just like a
Hmm.
fucking dog, right? And the cold showers to boot, the diet. But I was training when I got home for an hour and a half, 2 hours, weight training and planks and isometrics. Just
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
jacked. But that was my
Yeah.
ego then. So what I'm saying is,
Right.
the intent that you have, what you manifest becomes your reality, right? I've always had a longing for the longest fucking while, probably right up to this last year. I want to look like I did when I was 34. This is almost seven. Tomorrow will be 7 fucking years. That's not going to happen. And I'm okay with that now because I'm
Hmm.
reinventing myself. It's not about the
Yeah.
physicalities anymore. It's what's up here and what can come out of
Hmm.
this to help others, including myself, right? You know?
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. So it's definitely a game changer.
Yeah. I look at old guys, right? Like, I, I, I kind of try
I
to,
love old people, man.
mimic
You know?
the happiest old guys that I see. What do? They walk a little bit, they might do a little yoga, a little tai chi, a little swim, but are they killing themselves
They don't have
and
to.
creating a bunch of stress hormone in their life,
Yeah. No cortisol in the
because they
body.
want to have some sort of, vision of who they are according to, how many abs they can see. Like,
I
I
know,
get it,
right?
I get it. I've fallen prey to that
Yeah, we all have.
a hundred
We all have
percent.
that.
And it's very telling, you know, how our mind body spirit connection processes those plateaus.
Mhm.
It might, the Ferrari might be great for 2 weeks, and then it's
Yeah.
just another
Novelty.
goddamn thing that you're beholden to,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, often Seth, I think when I'm in the gym, I'll be curling weights and I'm like, I'll look around thinking, what the fuck am I really doing here, man? Right? Honestly, I'm paying a nice membership fee every month or an annual
Mhm.
to look at myself in the mirror, feeling empty by doing this.
Yeah,
But you know what it
yeah.
is? It's familiarity. Much like the ways some people might not like this, but it is actually true. In relationships, male or female, the one that's being abused tends to stay in that environment because it's familiarity, right?
Hmm.
And they find it very difficult to see a different viewpoint or a feasible uh, course in life that they could be channeling differently and create their own reality with a different environment. It's very difficult. And I believe that
Right.
I've programmed myself from a very young age, looking at Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, all these characters who are jacked. You're like, fuck, I gotta look like that guy to be accepted in the world. But
Right.
the
Right.
factor
Right.
is, you get to that point and you still feel the same inside, right?
Uh-huh.
So,
If not worse,
yeah,
you can,
definitely, because
because
you
you're
pay
killing
attention.
yourself to do this, and it's
Yeah,
so much,
yeah,
like we talked about the pie graph, right?
yeah.
I'm spending how big a piece of
It
pie
is, man.
to get that. I always try to picture a scale, right? Does the time and energy involved in bullshit equal the benefits, right? If it's a
Yeah.
job, if it's time, energy, and bullshit versus money. If
Yeah.
it's a relationship, same thing, right? If it's an obviousness of one is out of whack with the other, then what are you doing? You know,
Yeah.
you're
Right.
really just adding to your problems. There's
Yeah, moderation is key for everything, and I'm learning that now, and just have in the last few years, which is pathetically sad. But at the same time, I see people twice my age who are still chasing money like the fucking wind and pissing in their face, all for the sake of having some type of glorified life that they think, okay, I
yeah,
project myself 20 years from now, I'll have myself set up, everything will be hunky dory, and that's it. I'm not happy now. I want to be happy then. Now is all you fucking have. The present moment. Don't worry about the future. Don't worry about tomorrow even. Tomorrow's going to have all kinds of problems, right?
yeah.
And the best way Eckhart Tolle put it, man, for me to grasp was he had an individual ask him a question. It was a question and answer. And he says, well, I've gone through cancer. And I'm afraid, I've beaten it once, twice, but the third time I might not be so lucky. This might actually take me. And Eckhart said, well, in this present moment, are you suffering? The guy says, no. And I'm like, duh. Well, there you go. You're content in that moment. And that's all you have. Everything else is memories and projections of the future that aren't there as of yet. So all of that is
Absolutely.
irrelevant, right? And
Yeah.
this is what I'm trying to get across to my audience and the people around me, and including myself as a daily reminder. Even when you're slicing bread, if people do that anymore, washing your hands, showering, be in that moment. Don't project yourself into the future, what you have to do for the rest of the day. Same with meditation. You know how they always tell you your mind
Hmm.
drifts and wanders, and it does. Gently bring it back. It'll do that in every
Hmm.
day, man. Right? And that's where contentment
That's
lies.
Ram Dass. Be here now.
Yeah.
It is
Right.
echoed throughout eternity. If you know, I mean, that's to me that's the purest form of Zen, right?
It
Is
is.
um, uh, the be here now, and then the it's like not affixing some sort of judgmental uh, um, uh, recommendation on anything,
Hmm.
right? Things happen. Make rice, you know, get kidnapped, wake up, make tea. Like these are all things that happen, right? If you,
That's right.
it's only when we affix some source of emotional component that is a part of ego
Yeah.
that we are recognizing that this is bad,
Yes.
right? This is good. This is, if we just accept, all these things, then we're going to have a much easier time,
Well, it's true.
and it's
Flow like a river, man. Just go with it, right? And that's the bottom line here is I keep saying there's no right or wrong. It's just the perception of thought from that individual or individuals that create and fixate that idea that something may be right or wrong. But
right.
it's not the
And
case,
it's
man.
real. It and the power of that energy that's being emitted from our minds is really directly related to how long it's been, festering. It's like mania, right? Like you can't just talk somebody out of taking a drink when they're an alcoholic. You can't tell
It's
somebody just to think your way out of having a cigarette, or just calm down when you're manic. It is an accumulation of that mental energy and momentum. So, the idea that the ultimate success is going to be balance. The ultimate success is going to be acceptance and understanding and forgiveness. That's a huge one. Forgiveness is so huge for
oh,
me,
big time, dude.
uh,
Big time.
because if you're carrying
A lot
that
of weight.
detritus of these interpersonal relationships, and also judgment upon yourself, it's an enormous amount of real estate that you're leasing
Yeah,
for
definitely.
no
For
real.
nothing.
Yeah,
Like a vacant home that you're just hoarding away simply to
yeah,
say it's mine, but it's actually causing you a lot of grief, a lot of turmoil, and internally you're suffering immensely, and
Yeah,
people don't realize that. That's why, like, I may not forget something, but I can forgive something, right? And
for sure, for
what I
sure. It
say
would
is,
be, yep,
yeah, if those people totally wronged you, you can forgive them, but you don't have to have a continuum relationship with that individual or individuals. Just free
that's
them,
it.
man, and free yourself, right? Yeah.
That's it. And being self-aware enough to understand and recognize and not have any guilt about
Yes. Right.
protecting yourself, right? Like I've
Boundaries, man.
had toxic relationships that, went on way, way too long,
Yeah.
where I was unhappy, with what was happening and what I was subjecting myself to. But when you get a little distance, and you're able to put that under a microscope, you had the power all along.
Yeah.
Click your heels,
But you're
Dorothy.
giving
You're
it
home
away.
already,
Yeah.
right? Like you will. You are always subject to your own will, and that's very powerful once you take ownership and agency of that.
Yeah. But
I,
that
I
takes
call it.
practice too, right? Sorry, you call it?
No worries. Oh, I say it's commensurate causality, right? Like, everything is commensurate insofar as, the currency balances each other out,
Hmm.
right? Like if the currency is actual currency, like money, that's one currency. But if the currency is attention, the currency is time, the currency is something having to do with your energy, that's the price, and the causality is how much of that you're going to spend,
Yeah.
right? You can't get a gym body. Somebody can't get that for you. Somebody can't achieve enlightenment for you,
No.
right? you
Right.
can't you can't
You
pay
got to do the homework, man.
to be funny, right? Like you can't, but if you wanted, to work on these things, like you want to be a great actor, you want to be a great writer, a great painter, spend the time and the
Yeah.
currency to
Right.
get that thing, right? I mean, it's the same thing with, relationships. Completely. I know so many people who, they have children, uh, but are they really engrossed in caring about
Mm.
that child's enough to sacrifice their own time and energy for it,
Yeah.
right? Like, what good is it having a child if you feel like they are a nuisance and they're getting in the way? Because if people are honest, that was the rubric for a very number of generations, right? Like,
Yeah.
you kind of had to raise yourself, and understand, what your parents' world is different than yours. But, I think if you're going to get the full benefit of being a parent, you feel more connected to the baby who you've changed 1,000 diapers for than none at all,
But the
right?
other
Like,
point too is that when you find nuisancy within somebody, whether it be your child, a peer, coworker, whatever it is, all you really have to do is dissect it. What aren't you liking about that person's character? And realize it's a reflection of your own fucking self. That's the big key factor here is what you don't
yep.
like in someone else, you really can't stand within yourself, and you're suppressing it and then
Yeah,
projecting it onto others and
yeah,
blaming them. And it's like, no, no, ownership, man. Point that finger back at you. But
yeah.
I'll tell you, it's been a long time coming for me. Even it's easy to judge other people, to make condescending misconceptions of individuals to make yourself feel better. But ultimately, you're just hurting yourself. It's like taking a knife and you're pointing
Hmm.
it at someone, and then that mouth of yours that just rips into people, it's like you're turning it back and stabbing yourself. And
Yeah, yeah.
you think
There's a
you're healing
quote,
yourself.
there's a quote attributed to Buddha, but I'm sure it's been bastardized over the years. You know, um, Anger is like taking poison and expecting the
Yes.
other person to die.
I freaking read that one too, man. Right? I think even Sadhguru said it different times too, along those
Yeah,
lines. It's quite similar, but
right.
yeah. Shit, man.
I
That's
used to say it in the restaurant business, right? Like one of my favorites is the mantra is, I cannot be insulted by anyone I don't admire, right? Like, it really narrows it down, right? Like, it. is this other person going to win if I get mad? Because that's really what's at stake, right? So if somebody that I don't give a shit about or I don't have any connection to is capable of upsetting me, now it's like they've been carrying a big bag of shit and it's heavy, and they see an opportunity to get rid of some of that shit, and they're going to put it on you. You're, in a best case scenario, you're wearing perfect armor, and it just, drips right off you.
Yeah.
Right.
I know.
But
That's your point too, right?
you can be very aware of, what kind of shape your armor is in when little things break through it.
Exactly.
Right. You're driving and somebody does something, and, do you go up to 9.5 all right away? Analyze that. Why do you go to 9.5? Because of something outside of your control that doesn't, you have the choice of letting that affect you.
See, I love that point, because I'll touch base on that. I was watching and listening, more or less listening, because I'm going about my business while listening to a podcast with Tom Bilio, and he had a psychologist on there, and he was saying the same thing, that, the moment, like when you start practicing forms of meditation, the stillness of mind and awareness and all that helps you in those situations, because it almost puts a divider in between you and that expression you're about to present towards somebody, whether it be anger, resentment, or whatever it may be. It gives you that time to sit with yourself and go, wait a minute, how do I want to handle this? It's putting the brakes to it and realigning it and going, should I project anger towards this individual because I feel wronged by that one? When it's just another way of handling it in a more mature way, right? And meditation helps with that, man. It gives you that time, or that freezing time, to sit there and contemplate for a moment. How do I want to handle this situation? And, anger is
Right.
the best. I used to be the character that would go from 0 to 10 within milliseconds. Just a fire. It's like, where's that getting me? I'm heated.
Right.
My body's trembling because all the cortisol released.
Right. Right.
I'm stressing myself, and it's going to be carried on for days
Right.
on end. Like, what's the fucking point of that, right?
And, if you're able to, detach a little bit, get some distance, you're able to understand that it isn't that thing in the moment.
No.
You're, once again, suppressed emotional energy
Yes, Gabor Mate
is
said
it
right?
is trying to be released. Like, it doesn't like being in the attic, I mean, and so any opportunity it takes, we talked briefly about that. I said that's one of the reasons why universally across the world there is an attraction to team sports,
Right.
because it's a very safe, socially accepted platform for people to access some very primal things, right? Like glory, defeat, anger, and not to mention the fact that it's basically been co-opted as a way to introduce the concept of war, right? Like, the first time you're ever subjected to an us versus them scenario is usually on the sporting field, right? So if you can get that programming in early. You watch the fucking Super Bowl and it looks like, the whole thing has been sponsored by the armed services, because they got jets and they got, guns. It's like, I digress, but it just goes to show that most people would benefit greatly from having a good way to channel that energy. Get in touch with, channel it, write it. Like, those are the bookends to kind of what I consider my self-care is, speak your truth, whether it's writing or talking to people about it, whether it's talking to a therapist, but talk about your story. Write your story, and ultimately it ends with forgiveness, right? Like, that's the other end of the book. There's a bunch of little chapters in between, but if you're to pull the cliff notes, you start with truth to power, like speaking what it is, because I promise you, when you challenge some of the stories that you've told yourself about yourself, you find there's details, and those details get richer, and you get other pathways. It's like looking in through a great library. Like you're like, oh, there's not only more books on this shelf, there's a whole row, and there's another room. I mean, they're all interconnected, and they all have bearing upon this complicated web, which is being a human being, being an emotional creature. And that's really, I think, probably, if you were to in summation, the purpose of our time here, is to experience these things, to accept some things, to challenge other preconceived notions about who you are in relationship to the world and what the world is. And if there's I also I like to say, feel free to trade in your heroes, right?
Yeah.
Like, because if you've locked into what you thought you wanted to be or achieve at 25, at some point in time, it becomes its own opposite, right? Like, being the most interesting guy that closes down the bar every night is great when you're 25, but by 45, it's kind of pathetic, right?
Yeah.
Like, there is there is such a thing as expanding your parameters, and the heroes involved in that, because what other thing do we do than kind of like mirror the things and the people that we thought were cool and interesting, right, and with it. And I mean, do you put this guy on a pedestal, or do you of course you find any historical figure, and you understand that they're human. Like Gandhi had flaws, JFK had flaws,
right?
Abraham Lincoln had flaws, right?
Alan Watts is
Yes.
a perfect example of that. Everyone, even to this day, are just finding out he was a massive alcoholic. And coming to his last days, oh yeah, he was a massive alcoholic.
Who was?
Alan
Oh
Watts.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
right?
yes.
Awesome genius in his own way. But we all have our faults. All we're doing is steadily learning, redefining ourselves, evolving constantly, whether it's every year, every 5, every decade, whatever the fuck the case may be. Like, none of us have it down pat, but we're learning so that the people coming behind us, as we stated earlier in our conversations, they don't have such a difficult time with things, right? But it's something.
Amen. If we can help somebody avoid a couple of the hurdles that plagued us, by all means, self-care, empowerment, complete responsibility, forgiveness. You just throw out a bunch of bulletins and hope that they catch their mark, right? Because
I believe they do, man. Excuse me. You toss this out to the cosmos. God. Protein shake and teas don't mix well. Yeah, when you cast this out to cosmos, I've expressed my concerns before to a friend of mine. I said, what if it doesn't reach the audience that I'm hoping for? But then in reality, what is that really saying about what I'm trying to do anyways? I'm trying to gain some type of reputation from it, when in actuality, my idea was to start off to help others. I don't care about having a platform and going, fuck, look at me, right?
Hey, Van Gogh died without selling a single painting and thinking that he was a huge failure.
There, right? Yeah, exactly. So that point being, if I can cast this out and it helps one individual, even though it hits an audience of 1,000 people, kudos, man. Then my mission is, complete. That's what I'm looking for.
Totally.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's a good stepping off point, my brother.
Well, that's what I was going to say too. Like, we're nearing the end of this, and I thought, it's awesome to have a collaborated thought, just based on all the coverage of conversation we've had up to this point. And again, Seth, I wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart, buddy, to have you come on to my show like this and to express, the wisdom and knowledge that you've accumulated over your years. And it's been a joy, man. I gotta say, it's been awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And you know what, I'm hopefully learning more every day, so check back.
Yeah, we'll do, right?
We'll check back at a later time, man. I really appreciate it, and thanks for the love, brother.
Thank you, buddy.
Be good out there. Cheers.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Thanks.